Hello, YouTube. The next Old Testament citation I wanted to cover, it's not explicitly a prophecy, but it shows up in the baptism and the transfiguration accounts in each of the synoptic gospels, and it also shows up in the Acts of the Apostles and the Epistle to the Hebrews. Now, these citations are so much alike that I'm only going to read a couple different variants. The first one shows up in the baptism account in the Gospel of Matthew, which is chapter 3, verses 13 through 17. Then Jesus came from Galilee to John at the Jordan to be baptized by him. John would have prevented him, saying, "I need to be baptized by you, and do you come to me?" But Jesus answered him, "Let it be so now, for it is proper for us in this way to fulfill all righteousness." Then he consented. And when Jesus had been baptized, just as he came up from the water, suddenly the heavens were opened to him, and he saw the Spirit of God descending like a dove and alighting on him. And a voice from heaven said, "This is my Son, the Beloved, with whom I am well pleased." Now, the quote from the voice from heaven is from Psalm 2, verse 7. And in Matthew, it's actually a conflation of Psalm 2:7 and Isaiah 42:1. Now, I've covered Isaiah 42 in a different video that I'll link to. Now, there is the original source, which shows up in the Acts of the Apostles. This is in chapter 13, verses 32 and 33. "And we bring you the good news that what God promised to our ancestors, he has fulfilled for us, their children, by raising Jesus. As also it is written in the second psalm, 'You are my son, today I have begotten you.'" Now, I find that an interesting quote to show up in the Acts of the Apostles. And, it is interesting that it's different in the Gospel of Matthew. Because the phrase, "today I have begotten you," doesn't make a whole bunch of sense when talking about the Orthodox Christian doctrine of Jesus being eternally begotten of the Father. That would seem to indicate that there was a time where Jesus had not been begotten of the Father. But let's continue and go on to Psalm 2. It's pretty short, so I'll read the whole thing. "Why do the nations conspire, and the peoples plot in vain? The kings of the earth set themselves, and the rulers take counsel together against the Lord and his anointed, saying, 'Let us burst their bonds asunder, and cast their cords from us.'" Now, in verse 2, and it talks about the Lord and his anointed. This, in the Hebrew Bible, it always referring to a king, who's anointed before he's made king. So, it's not a reference to Jesus. Let's continue. "He who sits in the heavens laughs. The Lord has them in derision. Then he will speak to them in his wrath, and terrify them in his fury, saying, 'I have set my king on Zion, my holy hill. I will tell of the decree of the Lord. He said to me, You are my son, today I have begotten you. Ask of me, and I will make the nations your heritage, and the ends of the earth your possession. You shall break them with a rod of iron, and dash them in pieces like a potter's vessel.'" So it's pretty clear, who is speaking in verse 7. Who the Lord is speaking to. It's also referring to the anointed, the Israelite king. And I don't believe that Jesus, when he came, made the nations his heritage and the ends of the earth his possession. And I see no indication in this passage that these things were meant to be fulfilled at different times. Let's finish the chapter. Now therefore, O kings, be wise. Be warned, O rulers of the earth. Serve the Lord with fear. With trembling kiss his feet. Or he will be angry and you will perish in the way. For his wrath is quickly kindled. Happy are all who take refuge in him. So, Psalm 2 is referring to an Israelite king, and also a warning to the kings of other nations, don't mess with my anointed. Not referring to Jesus.